We turned this into this for less than £1,500. This is our 6x4 metre gym and office. Let me go through all the stages, how we built this. I'll go through the costs and how much we saved doing all of this ourselves. I'll be keeping a running total of all the money we spent in the corner of the screen. According to the garden room guide, a 6x4 metre garden room costs between £27,200 and £65,000, with an average of £39,309, which seems a bit high to me, but this is the mean average from research of 52 garden room companies. This is the garden when we first moved into the house. You'll see at the far end, next to the trees, there's a fence. Now behind that is the area that we've actually built the garden room in. So that fence is about where the front of the patio starts, and then the garden room's just behind it. First thing we needed to do was obviously clear that area and get rid of the trees. So the trees came down. So here's a before shot of what it looked like. And then once the fence was removed and the trees were chopped down, it looked a little bit like that. So then that full area was just completely cleared. And then it stayed like how you can see in the picture for quite a while. After this stage, we ended up doing the patio at the other end of the house, which was very uneven. So we actually had to dig out quite a lot of earth for this, which obviously had to be dumped somewhere. So it ended up getting dumped at this end of the garden. There was also bricks and rocks that were ripped out from various parts of the house and the outbuilding. There was obviously a lot of earth here to clear. So what we actually did was we bagged it up just in dumpy bags at the front of the house. We listed this on Facebook Marketplace, and then we gave it away for free. So people would come, take as much as they want, bag it up, and we basically just didn't have to pay for any removal of any of the materials. So what we did is we marked the area out for the concrete slab, and then we dug footings around the perimeter of that. We then got this area nice and level, ready to put hardcore down. So we actually got the hardcore for free, again off Facebook Marketplace. It was a landscaping company who'd had this delivered wrongly, and the company that delivered it basically said, keep it for free and we'll drop you the right stuff off. So I went in the truck a couple of times and collected all of this hardcore. There was about 2.5 tons, I think, worth. So we did the whole path, patio area and the area for the concrete pad. So next up, you can see I've started doing the forms for the concrete pad to go down. So this is actually our first cost of the build. The cost of this timber was £40.50. Once the forms were in place, I put the hardcore down. There's only a really thin layer of hardcore here, basically because that whole area was pretty much hardcore already. Once that was down, I hired a whacker plate to compress all of the hardcore. Now I did this for the concrete pad and the path and the patio at the same time, so that obviously saved hiring that twice. The cost of the whacker hire was £24. I then managed to get off again Facebook Marketplace some wire mesh, which I just used as a reinforcement for the concrete. Next up was putting the damp-proof membrane down, which I stupidly decided to do on my own on a windy day. The cost of the damp-proof membrane was £36.07. Once this was painstakingly down, it was ready for the concrete footings to be poured. After that, it was ready for the main concrete pour. So for the concrete pour, we hand mixed with 2 mixers the whole thing. And I actually managed to get all of the ballast for free because I offered a service swap with the company that did the aggregate, which they accepted, and I got all the sharp sand for laying the path and patio and the aggregate for free from them, so that was a massive saving. So the only costs for this concrete pad were the bags of cement, which were £139.80 for 30 bags. So on the day of the concrete pour, I had Emma helping. She's an absolute dab hand on the mixer. And my good friend Brad, who spent the day helping us. So we managed to get this whole thing poured in one day. We were originally going to do it in 2 halves, but we just cracked on and we managed to get it all done in one day. So the timber that you can see here that we use for tamping the concrete is actually what ended up being the ridge timber of the building. So that was a nice extra little saving as well. The ridge timber / tamping bar cost us £28.38. And as you can see, we ended up with a nice concrete pad ready for building on. So we left the concrete pad to cure nicely for a few months, waiting for it to be a bit nicer weather, ready to build the garden room. In the meantime, you can see in the background there, I've built the path and the patio, which I'll be covering in a separate video. When we were planning this build, I wanted to make it as cheap as possible. So I looked at a few different options and priced them up. Firstly, I looked at timber, but with timber prices being sky high at the time, I decided to look for alternatives. So another option I looked at were SIPS panels, which are structural insulated panels. These are basically foam insulation with steel either side, and they're often used in industrial builds because basically they're quite easy and fast to build with. The problem with these was, again, cost. I think it was going to cost about £3 just for the panels for this build. Then you've got to factor in the cost of all the brackets and the screws and the fixings, etc. Luckily, I managed to find someone selling some 100mm SIPS panels on Facebook Marketplace. These were £200 and included all of the fixings and all of the brackets needed to make this build. So what I did is I hired a van and drove across to Grimsby, which is about 45 minutes from our house. And we collected these SIPS panels and brought them back. And we pretty much filled an extra long wheelbase Sprinter. As you can see, they were a bit green, but they were all solid. They were basically good to go. So we left these on the patio, basically waiting for, like I said, some nicer weather ready to build. Then once the nicer weather came, we were ready to start building the garden room. These panels are actually incredibly easy to build with. Basically, what you do is you cut them to size. Basically what we did is we slotted them together, laid them down on the ground and marked them out into the pitch that we wanted for the roof. We then cut them to size, partly with an angle grinder and partly with this mini circular saw with a diamond blade on. And then once they're cut, you basically attach an L bracket using hammer fixings to your concrete pad. Then you put a bead of expanding foam along the bracket and you sit your panel on top of this. And then you use tech screws to then screw the panel also into the L bracket. So it's secured from the side and it's also sat onto the adhesive of the expanding foam. You then basically slot them together and run a bead of expanding foam in between to glue them together. And then you just go panel by panel until you've built your walls. Once the walls were built, it was ready to fit the windows. The windows were another good saving because we got them again off Facebook Marketplace for free. It's actually pretty common that people give windows away for free on things like Facebook Marketplace. What we did is we just spent a few months looking out for things that were suitable for this room and we ended up with a main front window, a tall side window, and then a wide frosted side window, all for free, which I just went and collected in the truck. Once the side and back walls were up, the ridge timber was added. This was basically cut into the SIPS panel, sat on top and bolted into the steel, which tied the two walls together and obviously made the ridge timber for the roof sitting on top. Now you can see there the two main side windows that were free from Facebook. The SIPS panels that we bought from Facebook only ended up being big enough for doing the back wall, side walls and the roof. So we had to think of another idea for the front, and luckily I managed to find someone giving away some 200mm SIPS panels for free on Facebook. Someone had done a garden build and they were the leftover ones, and they just happened to be pretty much perfect for the front wall of the building. With this front wall, we built the wall and fitted the windows at the same time just because it was a little bit easier. So the main window that you can see was, like I said, free off Facebook Marketplace. We decided to buy a door because I wanted like a full length glass door, just partly to let a bit of light in and partly because it looks better. Now this was a bargain again. It was a door and window fitter who was removing this from a house, and they sold it and it cost us £70 for the door. Once the doors and the windows were fitted, all four walls were up, it was then time to put the roof on. The ceiling and ridge timbers were painted using some leftover white paint that we had from the house renovation. After this, to make the windows look a little bit nicer and a little bit newer, I painted these with frencic alfresco paint. Now this paint didn't cost us anything because we had it already from painting the other windows and the door in the house. Once the structure was done and the windows were painted, it was time to clad the front of the building. So we actually used scaffolding boards for this, and then we charred this using a blowtorch, both for the look and to protect the wood. The cost of the scaffolding boards was £252, but we also cladded the internal back wall, which you'll see in a minute, as part of this cost. You can see here that I haven't painted the door handle because we swapped this for a new black one, and I also put new black window handles on the opening front windows, which cost us £15 in total. We then painted the roof and the sides of the building just to make it look a little bit nicer. So we painted the roof grey and the sides a sort of light minty green colour. The cost of this paint was £40. Once the painting was done, we added guttering to the front, spending £40 on square guttering. With the external part of the building pretty much complete, all that was left was to buy and fit the flashing. The flashing cost us £130, and this was for the ridge flashing and the barge boards for the sides of the building. Once the SIPS panels were all put together and the roof was on, we sealed between each panel using a flexible sealant just to make sure that no water could get in between each panel. Once everything externally was finished, it was ready to work on the inside. So as I previously mentioned, we cladded the back wall again with the scaffolding boards and then lightly charred this to create a nice pattern on the wood. We fitted out the front wall with OSB, and then we also used OSB to build the office space of the building. So the desk you can see is built from 18mm OSB, and then we also mounted an 18mm OSB sheet onto the wall, which was used for mounting the screen and speakers and various other things for the office area. We then painted the internal panels with some cheap and cheerful £10 B&Q grey paint, and fitted PVC trim to the windows, and also used some of the leftovers to cover up some of the gaps between the panels. Once the windows were all trimmed and sealed, we then used the leftover paint we had from the external painting to paint the internals of the windows. Next we put down the flooring, which is these black rubber mats. This was a purchase from eBay which cost us £200, and these are mats that have been used under a 3G football pitch. After a quick clean up, these were good as new, and it saved us quite a lot of money on buying proper gym mats, which are shockingly expensive. Once the flooring was down, we could fit the skirting boards. We used some PVC trim for this, just to hide the bottom of the SIPS panels. Emma then made this shelf using a offcut of scaffolding board we had and some pipe shelf brackets that we had left over from the house renovation. Charring this to match the front of the building and then just sealing this with varnish. We used the offcuts of the OSB to put some decorative panels on the wall and to also hide some of the joins of the SIPS panels. So that was us pretty much finished. I just want to add a couple of extra costs that I haven't mentioned during the video, which were the fixings. We spent £40 on these, and that included various bits such as the screws for the internal wood, some hammer fixings for the concrete and expanding foam. I just want to quickly mention a few things that we haven't included in the cost of this build. Firstly, we've got the furnishings. So we've got the curtains, the office chair, rugs, the chair at the back of the room, plus a few various prints and things on the walls. Secondly, all of the office and gym equipment that we've got inside. And then finally, we also have solar power in the office. This cost us about £700, but it isn't really part of the actual build process, so we haven't included this. This is something we actually added quite a few months after the build was complete, and you could easily use this space for a lot of things without needing power. We also decided to add a stove this winter. Now, even though these panels are 100mm insulation and the building retains heat quite well, it's just a bit too cold to be working at a desk in the winter. It's fine for using the gym, but we needed something to heat the room up for whilst I'm working. Now, there's bound to be a few costs that I've missed using this pretty average spreadsheet, but I've included all of the major costs in the project. The total cost of this build ended up being £1,520 and 42 pence, and we managed to save nearly £7 on just the materials alone. If we were going to get one of the garden room companies to do this, it would have cost us nearly £38,000 more than doing it ourselves. I'm going to be posting a more in-depth video showcasing what we've got in here, including the gym equipment and the office, so keep an eye out on that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.